Welcome to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapman, the podcast for couples who struggle with infertility and want to fulfill their dreams of becoming parents. In this podcast, you'll learn actionable strategies to deal with infertility from Dr. Michael Chapman, or Prof as he's affectionately known. Prof is the co-founder of IVF Australia and is a leading Australian infertility specialist who has helped over 3,000 couples realise their dreams of becoming parents. To access previous episodes packed with ideas, solutions and tips that actually work, head over to Dr. Chapman's IVF podcast on iTunes. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapman's rooms on 1-800-111-483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.
That first cry of a baby born after the long journey of IVF remains one of the most beautiful experiences in the world. As an obstetrician and an IVF specialist, I've had the privilege of experiencing this over many thousands of times in my long career, but I still remain moved by each baby's first cry. It signifies the end of a long journey and the beginning of a new life. This is Professor Michael Chapman, co-founder of IVF Australia and host of the IVF Journey podcast. Thanks for tuning in. To access all the previous episodes, head over to my website, www.theivfjourney.com, and select IVF Journey Podcast from the navigation menu. You'll also be able to find the various services that we provide at IVF Australia. So today we're going to talk about an interesting study that came out of Scotland recently, which indicated that when you follow up women who've been through IVF and not got a child, 25% of them will have a baby naturally in the next 5 years. I don't find that totally surprising because many women that we treat have a normal pelvis and have sperm that may not be quite as good as it should be, or sometimes even in unexplained infertility, it's as good as it can be. So all the building blocks are there to create a pregnancy. Certainly the Australian data would support that. Studies here have shown a 25% chance of a pregnancy after an IVF cycle. Some of those obviously were successful, but many were not. Some people say that's because women who haven't got pregnant through IVF basically give up, relax, and conception occurs, if you believe that stress has a part to play in not conceiving. So when we see a patient after they've been unsuccessful with IVF, I never say you can't get pregnant. The only times I would say that is if there's blocked tubes, totally blocked tubes. In all other cases, there's always a possibility. Now, the statistic out of Scotland, if you think about it, 1 in 6, that's 15% in 5 years. So you divide 15 by 5, that's 2.5% per year. It's not a great pregnancy rate. And a further cycle of IVF, in fact, may be better than sitting and waiting. That's a very low success rate. So going back to the unexplained infertility, which is the predominant group who get pregnant on their own, they were probably at some point, if we'd waited, going to get pregnant on their own without IVF. Something in the order of 25 to 30% of cases that we treat with IVF have unexplained infertility. And we're often pushed into that scenario by the patient rather than the doctor necessarily wanting to do IVF. Patients become impatient. Let's take unexplained infertility in a bit more detail. What we've done to get to that diagnosis is exclude the main things, which are tubal patency, sperm quality, and ovulation. And if they're all normal, we call it unexplained infertility if it's gone on for more than 12 months. If we take that group of patients and we convince them that pregnancy is likely, they don't need to worry, and possibly that's a reasonable approach for women under the age of 31, 32, 33. What the Dutch have found is that in the next year after 1 year of unexplained infertility, 50% of those will get pregnant without any assistance. And if you do the statistics of chance, that's about what you would expect, which would indicate that it is purely a chance event. In other programs, I've talked about the 15% per cycle pregnancy rate at the start of a fertile couple's attempts to conceive, the roll of the dice, the 1 in 6 chance. People will throw a 6 straight off. A couple the other day coming because of some changes in his sperm situation, where he said to me, I listened to your podcast and you were talking about the roll of the dice of throwing a 6. I've had 2 children and we hit it first time. And I said, yep, you can throw 2 6s in a row. We always have. And anyway, I'll say it again. We throw a dice, and how many times can you throw a dice and not get the 6? We've all experienced runs of 10, 12, 14, 15 times where we're trying to start a game of Monopoly and you can't get that bloody 6. So there is a chance event in it all. By 12 months, most couples in this day and age are not prepared to wait longer. And so therefore we go into IVF. And if it fails, as we know that 50 to 60% will, they still have that own chance of conceiving. That unexplained infertility dice will eventually roll in their favour and a pregnancy will occur. And as I indicated earlier, perhaps what we do when we do IVF may improve the hormone background, but probably more importantly, after you, in a sense, give up your whole body, which is not just your hormones, but your psychology, all relaxes, and perhaps pregnancy happens because of that. So I suppose what I'm saying, that in the vast majority of cases where IVF fails, it doesn't exclude the possibility of a pregnancy in the future. So don't necessarily give up after you've been unsuccessful in an IVF cycle. And don't forget that you can access all the previous episodes by going to our website www.theivfjourney.com and select IVF Journey Podcast from the navigation menu.
Thank you for listening to the IVF Journey with Dr. Michael Chapman, the podcast which helps couples negotiate their way through the IVF journey, all the way to parenthood. You can also ask questions by contacting Dr. Chapman's rooms on 1-800-111 483 or by emailing him michael.chapman@ivf.com.au.